16 bucks, and what do you get? Another year older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go out my soul to the Zuckerberg store. No, I want that cash, darn it. There we go. And there we go. Shut up with your too low frame rate. We'll deal with you this year sometime. Hello. Excuse me. Happy New Year. Happy holidays. Hope yours have been good so far. I'm Tad. The rest of you are the rest of you. And very glad to have you. As I said, happy holidays. It is now 2022. How did that happen? Those of you who may be slightly younger than me may never fully grasp how extremely science fictional it is being in the 21st century. Trust me, it is. And if any of you make it to the 22nd century, you'll know exactly what I mean. But here we are, and we have survived most of the holidays. Certainly the murderer's row of the holidays, as they used to say about the 1927 Yankees, the heart of their batting order. We have gotten past Thanksgiving and various birthdays and Christmas and now New Year's, and we're still here, and that's a good thing. That's something to celebrate right there. And I'm very glad to have you with me. I am still working, of course. I am working on the Navigator's Children. We are hanging out and hanging loose here. Of course, still being cautious with the Omicron part of the pandemic resurgence, because we still have the same issues, although most of the people in the house have gone back for booster vax and stuff like that. But we're still here, and that's a good thing. As I said, there's no... Hang on, let me just... Mic was turned off, on, down, somewhere. Anyway. There. Okay. So yes. Anything else to report? Yeah, just, working all the time. Obviously, you can see I haven't done much cleaning in the office. Although that is part of my plan during the next few weeks to do various household things that I've been putting off while we were getting the holidays dealt with. And I'm saying a lot because that's kind of the mode that I'm in at the moment. Kind of in an mode. Because every time I think of something, 5 other things are crowding in saying, don't forget me! Don't forget me! As a result, I'm just trying to deal with what's immediately in front of me. And happily, right now, what's immediately in front of me is saying hello to all of you and getting on with tonight's reading. So that's a fairly simple menu that I can deal with. So I'm going to do that. So let's see who we've got here. Oh, and first off the bat is my sister-in-law, Lisa. Hello, good morning to you, and Happy New Year, sweetie. Hope you're doing well. And give my love to everybody, all the family, your what do we call him? I mean, technically he's your husband, but, he's a troublemaker. And, of course, your lovely children. Anyway, so good to see you, though, however briefly and however virtually. Ronnie, good morning and Happy New Year to you. Chris, good morning to you and Happy New Year. James, hello, James. Good to see you. Hellos back to you. Ilva, yes, I am wearing my awesome WoW shirt which was given to me by Deborah before she knew it was a Hamilton shirt. She just saw it, I guess, and thought, Tad needs an awesome wow shirt. At that point, I didn't know Hamilton particularly well. My daughter immediately recognized it, of course, and said, "Oh, Hamilton." And I said, "Oh, cool." I have now seen it several times, so including once live, which was in on Broadway, which was really wonderful. It was great fun. I haven't been to a Broadway show in years and years and years, and my publishers, Betsy and Sheila, were kind enough to take me and daughter Devon while we were in New York the last time, or one of the last times. Not the last time, but second to last time. And it was bloody brilliant. What can I say? I know everybody's like, oh my God, a whole 2, 3 years have gone by. We have to rethink everything. I still think it was a great show, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. So, who else is here? Yes, so Ilva, Happy New Year to you, my dear. Happy New Year. And I'm glad I have a fave shirt on for you. Mark, good morning to you, sir. And there's Lisa again. Yes, Happy New Year. Good to hear from you. And who else we got? Dirk. Hello, hello. Good morning from COVID German. Oi, I know. We thought we'd be done with this, didn't we? We did. We really did. And we were really wrong. But that's okay. Slowly, surely, moving forward, the less time we spend fighting with each other, the faster we'll get these things solved, which is actually a good rule of thumb for human behavior in general. Not that there aren't some things you don't have to fight. Yes, you have to fight fascism, you have to fight ugliness, you have to fight bullying. By ugliness, I'm not talking about anything physical. I'm talking about ugly behavior and ugly ways of treating people. You have to fight fascism, racism, homophobia, all that stuff, because everybody has a right to their own life and what they want to do with it, and to be treated like another equal human being. Simple, folks, not difficult, not complicated at all. That's all. Just, every major religion came up with some variant of the golden rule, unless you're like a sick puppy who likes to be mistreated, you treat everybody like you would want to be treated. Very simple, not complicated at all. But I know all of my friends and readers and whatnot already do that stuff, so you don't need me to tell you. Sally, good morning. Nice to catch up with you, and Happy New Year. Stephen, I'm glad to hear you think so. I'm there with you. I hope it's going to be an awesome year. Let's just go with that idea, and we will go with it, and we will run. We will run with that. Wouter, hello, and Happy New Year to you and Iris, both of you. Cliff, Happy New Year, and to your family as well. Good to hear from you. And there is my lovely mother-in-law. Happy New Year, Hazel. Love you all too. We miss you, and we hope to see you very, very soon. Hopefully in this new year. So we're going to work on that. John, hello. Happy New Year to you. Ronnie has to point out 2022 is when Soylent Green was set. I know, it's the science fiction future. I think we're going to avoid the Soylent Green thing, although we may all wind up eating bugs. But hey, there's worse things to do. If it saves the planet, I'll eat some bugs. Just put a lot of chili sauce on them. Kristen, hello. How are you? Good to see you. Chris, and to see you too. Excellent. Happy New Year. Oh, that's Chris for the second time saying hello to somebody else. Oh, sorry, Chris. Well, it's still counts. So there you go. Who else have we got here? Boris. Hello. Happy New Year, Boris. Good to see you. Thank you for jumping aboard. And I think we've got everybody there who has checked in. So, all right. Anything else that I need to report? No, I'm just, like I said, it's funny because the pandemic hasn't made as big a difference to me in terms of my daily life as it does to a lot of people. Yes, admittedly, even I am getting a little bit sick of moving from, one room to another room back and forth and not doing much else. But it also means that, I'm doing what I normally do, which is like I'm either working or I'm thinking about working or I'm spending time with my loved ones, two-legged and four-legged, or I'm going back to working again, and as long as I can do that, I've got a ton of stuff left I want to write. Before the great librarian takes me and puts me back on the shelf. So, there's people who are in worse situations than I am, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm not that I I think anybody's feeling too sorry for me, but I definitely don't need to be felt sorry for because, I'm a homebody anyway at the best of times. Not that I don't like to go out and socialize occasionally, but that's an occasional thing. I've been pretty much not quite a hermit, but I spend most of my time thinking about books and especially thinking about my very complicated books because they're like that. I'm doing that right now because, as I think I've mentioned to you guys, I'm between the time that I put aside the whole Navigator's Children, which at that point was still going to be one very large volume, to work on Brothers of the Wind. And then I picked up Navigator's Children, realized it was going to have to be broken into 2 volumes, much to my shame, regret, and the eternal cackling laughter of everybody who knows me. Yes, Tad has written another 4-book trilogy. And so I went and took the first half of the Navigator's Children and called it Into the Narrow Dark and worked on that. Now I've finished that. That is basically off my desk for now, although there will still be a few more iterative processes to be taken care of along the way. There will be the copy edited manuscript, and then that will go to proofs, and I will have one more chance there to tinker with things. But basically, it's off my desk, so I'm back to Navigator's Children, which is now the second half of the book that was originally all going to be. But of course, during the course of working on these things, and over like most of a year since I wrote the last part of where I had gotten to on the final volume, a lot of stuff has changed in the books. It's inevitable when you spend a lot of time rewriting that other ideas will come, or you will say, oh, that's a little weak. I think I could do better with that now, or, that's not as motivated as I'd like it to be. So I'll change that. So a lot of that kind of stuff has gone on. And now I have to reintegrate all of that new material with what I've already written and then also finish the book. So it's going to be a busy next couple of months. That's all I have to say. Not complaining, mind you, not complaining. I am one of the people with the least amount to complain about of people that I know. So I'm definitely not complaining, but I just thought I would fill you in on that's the process that's going on. So I'm doing these a whole lot of thought experiments at this point, which means it looks like I'm comatose because I usually do them on my back because it's easier for me than sitting up for a number of boring inflammatory reasons. Not inflammatory in like the political sense, but literally in terms of like joints and stuff. So I spend a lot of time sitting on my back or lying on my back, staring up at the ceiling with earbuds jammed in my ears, playing something that doesn't disrupt me with lyrics and mostly also doesn't disrupt me with really strong beats or anything. So a lot of ambient, a lot of classical, a lot of stuff like that, some jazz. And while I'm doing that, I am trying to think of every single different way. I literally have to go, okay, where did I leave things at the end of Into the Narrow Dark? Because literally nothing has to be the same from there, even though I've written 25 more chapters or whatever. Nothing has to be the same, which is a really interesting thing when you're as locked into something as I was when I was writing that, what is now going to be the 4th book. It was all, this is real, this is happening, this is the truth, this is what's going on. And then I suddenly, realize, well, but wait a minute, not only have you changed some things already, but you could change a lot of things if you wanted to. So almost every plotting decision, especially when you're working with multiple characters who are coming in from multiple different directions, and some are going to all get together near the ending, and others are not going to be there, but they're going to have their own arcs. Various things like that are going on. And you really have to be willing to say, well, what if none of this was true? Only the stuff that is now ready to be published is true, and everything else is up for negotiation. And it's really interesting because it's suddenly, you put these things together before very carefully and erected them as best you could with as much buttressing and whatnot to make sense out of them and make them feel right. But you realize I'm not committed to any of them until it actually goes to the publishers. I'm not committed. So I'm spending a lot of time lying on my back just throwing things out and saying, what if I just got rid of that part and did it completely differently? And it's both a very freeing feeling and also horrifying because I put so much work into the book to this point that the idea of changing anything is horrifying because they're all so minutely woven together. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. So I spend a lot of time lying around ripping my own work to shreds. Which, as I said, it's interesting, it's freeing, and it's terrifying at the same time because you realize, like, I could just start over on a lot of these plot lines and just, completely change what I thought was going to happen at the end. Anyway, so when we had last been involved with Otherland City of Golden Shadow, first book, first volume, we had just gone through two major things had happened that you need to know about. One of which was that Rini, along with Kabu, her companion, originally raised amongst the San Bushmen of the Okavango Delta, and Rini, who is a teacher of virtual engineering, Rini and Kabu had gone to Mr. J's, which is this online VR nightclub where she thinks something happened to her brother Stephen that has caused him to go into a coma. And during that course of that visit, they met up with a very disturbing large man named Strumbello, who seemed to know more about them than he should. And he took them on a little tour of the place and introduced them to some of the more unpleasant aspects of Mr. J's, which is really a very unpleasant place, even though it's all virtual. And somewhere during the course of it getting extremely horrifying and Rini wanting to leave, Kabu disappeared. So that was Rini's plot line. So we won't probably get back to that tonight, but in case we do, that's what was going on there. And then we started out a section with what seemed to be the last moments of a prisoner being executed by lethal injection. And that turned out to be, in fact, a VR experience that Orlando was undergoing. And he's just been sitting in a virtual bar, coffee shop, tavern, whatever it is, with his friend Fredericks. And Fredericks is telling him essentially, that you're weird. Why would you want to go through these death simulations? And Orlando's saying, I don't know, they just interest me. So anyway, and then now Orlando and Fredericks have decided that they've got things to talk about because remember, Orlando got kicked out of the middle country where he was the King Hell badass and was distracted in the middle of what should have been a very easy quest by the sudden appearance of an image of a golden city that was so much unlike everything else in the simulation that Orlando completely failed to pay attention and got killed by a lich, which is basically a shambling dead guy. So Orlando and Fredericks are now going to another part of online to discuss this. Okay? Orlando's electronic cottage was in Park Corner, P-A-R-C, by the way. Park Corner, an upscale but bohemian section of the inner district, inhabited mostly by well-to-do university students. His home base in the virtual world was an almost stereotypical version of a boy's bedroom, the kind of room Orlando would have liked to have at home but couldn't. A wall-wide screen showed a constant live video feed from the MBC project, a vast swirling desert of orange. Orlando's visitors had to squint to see the armies of little constructor robots moving through the haze of Martian dust. On the far wall, a broad window looked down on a simulation of a late Cretaceous waterhole. It was pretty lively for over-the-counter wallpaper. At the moment, a young Tyrannosaurus was messily devouring a duck-billed Hadrosaurus. The interior was modeled on the Scandinavian-style beach house Orlando's parents had rented when he was a child. He had been very impressed with the multitude of nooks, stairs, and partially hidden alcoves, and if anything, he had exaggerated the labyrinthine effect in his virtual reconstruction. Strewn everywhere about the multi-level space were souvenirs of his, and especially Thargor's, net gaming prowess. Thargor, of course, is Orlando's alter ego in the Middle Country. One corner of the room held a pyramid of simulated glass cases, each one containing a replica of the head of a vanquished enemy, rendered directly from a snapshot dump of the foe's final seconds whenever possible. At the summit of the pyramid, Dieter Cabo's black elf prince held pride of place, cross-eyed from the sword stroke that had just split his narrow skull. That battle had lasted 3 days and had almost caused Orlando to fail his biology midterm, but it had been worth it. People in the middle country still spoke of the epic struggle with awe and envy. Various other objects had niches of their own. There were cages of wrestling homunculi, the remnants of another enemy's misfired spell, the Aselphian orb that Thargor had pulled from the brow of a dying god, even the skeletal hand of the wizard Dreyra Jar. Thargor had not removed that himself, but he had filched it from a certain merchant of oddities only moments before its original and somewhat irritated owner arrived to reclaim it. Up the length of the staircase, in place of a banister, stretched the body of the unpleasant worm of Morson Keep. An hour wrestling with the thing in the keep's brackish moat, and a certain respect for anything so stupid and yet so determined, had earned it a place in his collection. Besides, he thought it looked pretty detailed, stretched out beside the stairs. I didn't think you'd want to talk about it. Frederick slid down onto the broad black leather couch. I figured you'd be really upset. I am upset. But there's more to this than Thargor getting killed. Much more. Frederick squinted. Orlando didn't know what his friend looked like in real life, but he was pretty sure he wore glasses. What does that mean, more to this? You impacted. Thargor got killed. What did I miss? You missed a lot. Come on, Fredericks, have you ever seen me do something like that? Someone hacked my venture. Somebody got at me. He did his best to explain the arresting vision of the Golden City, but found it was almost impossible to find words that would explain how vibrantly, unbelievably real it had been. It was like if I tore a hole in that window. He gestured to the Cretaceous, gnashing and squawking on the far side of simulated glass. And you could see the real world behind it. Not a video picture of the real world, not even with the best resolution you can imagine, but the real, actual world. But it was someplace I've never seen. I don't think it's a place on Earth. You think Morpher did it? Or maybe Dieter? He was really scorched over the black elf thing. Don't you get it? Nobody we know could do this. I don't know if the government or Critapong's top-level research lab could do it. Orlando began to pace back and forth across the sunken room. He felt hemmed in. He made a quick gesture, and the floor space expanded, moving the walls and Frederick's couch several yards back. Hey! His friend sat up. Are you trying to tell me it was UFOs or something? Come on, Gardino. If someone was doing something that weird on the net, it would be in the news or something. Orlando paused, then shouted, Beazle! A door opened in the floor, and a small something with rolling eyes and too many legs leaped out and hurried toward him. It tumbled to a stop by his feet, then tugged itself into an untidy heap and said, in a raspy Brooklyn accent, Yeah, boys? Do a news search for me on the phenomenon I just described or any other major net anomalies, and find me the record of the final 15 minutes of my last Thargor game. Doing it now, boss. Another door opened in the floor, and Beazle popped into it. There was a cartoon soundtrack noise of pots and pans crashing and things falling. Then the creature reappeared, limbs flailing, dragging a small black square as though it were the anchor off a luxury liner. Phew! The agent panted. Lot of news to check, boss. Want to look at this while I'm searching? It's the game record. Orlando took the small square and stretched. It grew to the size of a beach towel and hung unsupported in space. He started to tilt it toward Fredericks, then smiled. Even with as much time as he spent on the net, he could still fall into a bit of RL thinking when he was in a hurry. VR didn't work that way. If Fredericks wanted to see the sample, he'd see it no matter where he was sitting. But now he was thinking about angles. He rapped on the square with his finger and it expanded into the third dimension. "Run it, Beazle," he said. "Give me a viewpoint from somewhere outside the characters." There was a moment's pause as the processors reconfigured the data. Then the black cube was illuminated by the light of a torch flickering on two figures. "Diamonds of imperial weight," he heard himself saying in his deepened Thargor voice. "50! By the gods! Yes, now shut your mouth." Orlando surveyed the scene critically. It was strange to stand on the outside of Thargor like this, as though the barbarian were only a character in a net flick. Too early. I haven't dug into the tomb yet. Forward 10 minutes. Now he could see his alter ego pushing through the upside-down thicket of roots, torch in one hand, rune sword in the other. Suddenly, Thargor stood straight, Life Reaper lifted as if to ward off a blow. "That's it," said Orlando. "That's when I saw it. Beazle, give me POV so I can see the wall directly in front of Thargor." The image blurred. An instant later, the viewpoint had moved to a place just behind the mercenary's right shoulder. The wall was fully visible, including the place where the burning crevice had appeared. Except it hadn't appeared. "What? This is scanny. Freeze it, Beazle." Orlando slowly rotated the shape, looking at the wall from different sides. His stomach lurched. I don't believe this." "I don't see anything," said Fredericks. "Thanks for pointing that out." Orlando made his agent change the viewpoint several times. He and Fredericks even froze the recorded simulation and entered it, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. Thargor was not reacting to anything visible. Shit. Orlando led his friend back out of the recording. "Let it run." They watched in silence as Thargor leaned forward to stare at the still unbroken wall. Then they heard Fredericks as Pithlet the thief shouting, "There is something coming into the chamber! The tomb's guardian! Thargor!" "It didn't happen that fast, did it?" Frederick sounded a little uncertain, but Orlando felt a surge of relief. He wasn't crazy after all. "It sure as hell didn't. Look, here it comes." He pointed to the Lich shambling in from the edge of the cube, battle axe flailing. "The whole sequence takes 10 seconds maybe, according to this. But you know it was longer than that, right?" "Yeah, I'm pretty sure you were staring at that wall for a much longer time. I thought you'd had to break your connection or the link had gone dead or something." Orlando snapped his fingers and the cube vanished. "Beazle, investigate that section of the game recording for editing or tampering of any kind. Check runtime discrepancies against the game clock. And send a copy to the table of judgment, noted as a possible improper character death." The spidery agent popped into the room from out of nowhere and sighed deeply. "Geez, boss, anything else you want me to do? I got the first download of search records." "File 'em. I'll look at them later." Anything seriously interesting? Anything right on the nose? Golden cities and or super real phenomena in virtual media? Not really, but I'm giving you everything I can find that's even a little warm. Good. Something was tugging at the back of Orlando's mind, a memory of the strange metropolis, its shining pyramids and towers of folded amber and gold leaf. At first it had seemed a personal vision, a gift for him alone. Was he ready to give up on that possibility? "I changed my mind about the table of judgment. I don't want them involved. Not yet, anyway." Beazle grunted. "Whatever. Now, if you don't mind, I got work to do." The creature produced a cigar from out of the air, stuck it in one corner of its wide, wobbly mouth, then exited through a wall, ostentatiously blowing cartoon smoke rings. "You gotta get another agent," said Fredericks. "That one's scanny, and you've had it for years. That's why we work so well together." Orlando crossed his legs, Indian style, and floated half a yard up into the air. The whole point of having an agent is that you don't need to worry about commands and stuff. Beazle knows what I mean when I say something. Fredericks laughed. Beelzebug? That's so woofy. Orlando glowered. I named it when I was a kid. Come on, we've got some weird stuff happening. Cheesine Major sampled. Are you going to help me think, or are you going to sit there making stupid comments? Sit here making stupid comments? Thought so. Christabel's daddy and his friend Ron, but Christabel had to call him Captain Parkins, were sitting in the living room having a couple of jars. That's what they called it when they drank her father's scotch and talked. But when her daddy drank some by himself or with Mommy, it wasn't called that. One of those grown-up things. She was wearing her storybook sunglasses, but she was having trouble paying attention to the story because she was also listening to the men. It was a treat for her daddy to be home in the daytime, even on a Saturday, and she liked to be in the room he was in, even if he was talking to Captain Parkins, who had a silly mustache that looked like it belonged to a walrus. The two men were watching some football players on the screen. It's a shame about that Gamecock kid, whatever his name was, her daddy said. His poor parents. Hey, football's a dangerous game. Captain Parkins paused to drink. She couldn't see him because she was looking at Sleeping Beauty on the storybook sunglasses, but she knew the sounds he made swallowing, and she also knew his mustache would be getting wet. She smiled to herself. Most of them are ghetto kids. They never get out otherwise. It's a calculated risk, like joining the military. He laughed his loud ha-ha-ha laugh. Yeah, but still, it's a hell of a way to go. What do you expect when you got kids who are 400 pounds of muscle and can run like a sprinter? One of them hits you and pow! Even with that new body armor, it's a wonder there aren't more deaths. I know what you mean, her daddy said. It's like they're breeding them special in the inner city. Extra big, extra fast. Like they're a whole different species. I was in the National Guard during the St. Louis riots, said Captain Parkins. There was something cold in his voice that made Christabel squirm even across the room. They are a whole different species. Well, I wish the Heels would start recruiting a few more of them, her daddy said, laughing. We could use some muscle on our defensive line. Christabel got bored with listening to them talk about sports. The only things she liked were the names of the teams. Tar Heels, Blue Devils, Demon Deacons. They might have been from a fairy tale. The picture of the handsome prince had been frozen for a little while. She touched the earpiece and let it run. He was sliding through a forest of bushes, covered with thorns, big, long, sharp ones. Even though she'd seen the story many times, she still worried that he might get caught on one of them and really be hurt. He made his way through the ring of thorns, wondering what might be hidden inside, the voice said in her earplug. She was only wearing one, so she could hear Daddy and his friend talk, so the voice was quiet. Now you read the next part, it told her. Christabel squinted at the lines of print that appeared beneath the thorns as though written on a cloud of mist. Several times he was snagged on the thorny branches, she read. And once he was caught fast so that he feared he might never escape. But he carefully pulled his shirt and cloak free. His clothes were torn, but he was not hurt. Christabel, honey, could you read a little more quietly? Her daddy called. Ron doesn't know how that one ends. You'll spoil it for him. Funny. Very funny, said Captain Parkins. Sorry, Daddy. She read on, whispering, as the prince broke through a wall of cobwebs and found himself at the gate of Sleeping Beauty's castle. Oh, I've got a story about our little old friend, said Captain Parkins. Caught him yesterday mucking about in the records for the PX. You'd think with the way he goes through food that he was just trying to double his meals quota, but he was just trying to increase his allowance of a certain key product. Let me guess. Plant food? Fertilizer? Even stranger. And considering he hasn't been out of that place in 30 years, downright bizarre. Christabel stopped listening then, because there were new words forming across the bottom of the Sleeping Beauty story. They were bigger than the others, and one of them was her name. Help me, Christabel, it read. Secret, don't tell anyone. As the word secret appeared, she realized she was reading out loud. She stopped, alarmed, but Captain Parkins was still talking to her daddy, and they hadn't heard her. I told the PX to refuse the order unless he could give them an acceptable explanation, of course, and I also asked him to reroute any unusual requests to me. Now, what do you think he's after? Making a bomb? Spring cleaning? Like you said, he hasn't been out in decades. No, I think he's just senile. Well, we'll keep an eye on him. Maybe I should drop by and check up after I've shaken this cold. I'm sure that place incubates viruses like nobody's business. Christabel was still reading the words in her storybook sunglasses, but she was reading them silently now and holding her breath, too, because it was such a strange secret to have right next to her daddy. And bring them to me, please. Hurry, don't tell anyone. Secret. The regular words came back, but Christabel didn't want to read about Sleeping Beauty anymore. She took off her sunglasses, but before she could stand up, her mother appeared in the living room door. Well, you boys look comfortable, she said. I thought you were sick, Mike. Nothing that a little football and a few judicious doses of single malt won't clear up right smart. Christabel stood up and turned off the sunglasses in case they started talking out loud and gave the secret away. Mom, can I go out just for a minute? No, honey, I've just put lunch on the table. Have something to eat first, and then you can go. Ron, will you join us? Captain Parkins shifted in his chair and put his empty glass down on the coffee table. I'd be delighted, ma'am. Christabel's mother smiled. If you call me ma'am again, I'll be forced to poison your food. It'd still be an improvement over what I get at home. Her mother laughed and led the men into the kitchen. Christabel was worried. The message had said hurry, but once lunch was on the table, no one went anywhere. That was the rule, and Christabel always obeyed the rules. Well, almost always. She stood up, a stalk of celery in her hand. Can I go out now? If it's okay with your father. Her daddy looked her up and down like he was suspicious. For a moment she was scared, but then she saw he was playing a joke on her. And where are you taking that celery, young lady? I like to eat it when I'm walking. She took a bite to show him. I like to make it crunch when I walk, so it sounds like a monster going crunch, 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 stepping on buildings. All the grown-ups laughed. Kids, said Captain Parkins. Okay then, but be back before dark. I promise. She scurried out of the dining room and took her coat down off the peg, but instead of heading directly for the front door, she went quietly down the hall toward the bathroom and opened the cabinet under the sink. When she had filled her pockets, she moved as silently as she could back to the door. I'm going now, she shouted. Be careful, little monster, her mother called back. Red and brown leaves were skittering across the front lawn. Christabel hurried to the corner. After peeking back to make sure no one was watching, she turned toward Mr. Sellers' house. Nobody answered when she knocked. After a few minutes, she let herself in, even though it felt funny, like being a robber or something. The wet, hot air pressed in all around her, so thick it seemed like something alive. Mr. Sellers was sitting in his chair, but his head was way back, and his eyes were closed. For a moment, she was sure he was dead and was getting ready to be really scared. But then one eye opened, like a turtle's eye, really slow, and he looked at her. His tongue came out, too, and he licked his ragged lips and tried to talk, but he couldn't make any sounds come out. He held his hand up toward her. It was shaking. At first she thought he wanted her to take it, but then she saw that he was pointing at her bulging pockets. "Yes, I brought some," she said. "Are you okay?" He moved his hand again, almost a little angry this time. She pulled the bars of her mother's face soap out of her coat and piled them in his lap. He began scratching at one of the bars with his fingers, but he was having trouble getting the wrapping off. "Let me do it." She took the bar out of his lap and unpeeled it. When it lay in her hand, white and shiny, he pointed to a plate sitting on the table beside him. On the plate was a very old cheese. It was all dry and cracked, and a knife. "You want some food?" she asked. Mr. Sellers shook his head and picked up the knife. He almost dropped it. His hands were shaking so much. But then he held it out to Christabel. He wanted her to cut the soap. She sawed away at the slippery bar for some time. She had done soap carving in class, but it wasn't easy. This time she concentrated very hard, and at last she managed to cut off a piece as wide as two of her fingers side by side. Mr. Sellers reached out a hand like a melted bird claw and took it from her, then popped it in his mouth and slowly began to chew. "Yuck," she said. "That's bad for you." Mr. Sellers smiled for the first time. Little white bubbles were in the corners of his mouth. He took the soap and the knife from her and began to cut himself more pieces. When he had swallowed the first and was about to put the second in his mouth, he smiled again and said, "Go get changed." His voice was weak, but at least he sounded like the Mr. Sellers she knew. When she returned wearing the terry cloth bathrobe, he had finished the whole first bar and had begun to cut up another. "Thank you, Christabel," he said. "Zinc peroxide. Just what the doctor ordered. I've been very busy and I haven't been getting my vitamins and minerals." "People don't eat soap for vitamins," she said indignantly. But she wasn't completely sure, because since she'd been in school, she'd been getting her vitamins in a skin patch. And anyway, maybe old people had a different kind of vitamins. "I do," the old man said. "And I was very sick until you got here." "But you're better now?" "Much better. But you should never eat any. It's just for special old men." He wiped a smear of white from his lower lip. "I've been working very, very hard, little Christabel. People to see, things to do." Which was a silly joke, she knew, because he never went anywhere or saw anyone but her and the man who delivered his food. He'd told her that. His smile went away and his eyes started to close. After a moment, he opened them again, but he looked very tired. "And now that you've rescued me, perhaps you'd better head back home. I'm sure you had to make up some story about where you were going. I feel guilty enough about having you lie to your parents without getting you in trouble by keeping you too long." "How did you talk to me in my storybook sunglasses?" "Oh, just a little trick I learned when I was a young cadet." His head wobbled a little. "I think I need to sleep now, my friend. Can you let yourself out?" She sat up straight. "I always let myself out." "So you do. So you do." He raised his hand as if he were waving to her. His eyes closed again. When Christabel had changed back into her clothes, they were damp, so she would have to walk around for a while before she went home. Mr. Sellers was asleep in his chair. She looked at him carefully to make sure he wasn't sick again, but he was a much pinker color than he'd been when she arrived. She cut him off a few more pieces of soap, just in case he felt weak when he woke up again, then tucked his blanket close around his long, thin neck. "It's so difficult," he said suddenly. She jumped back, afraid she'd woken him up, but his eyes did not open, and his voice was whispery and hard to understand. Everything must be hidden in plain sight. But I despair sometimes. I can only speak to them in whispers, half-truths, bits of tattered poetry. I know how the oracle felt. He mumbled a bit more, but she couldn't hear the words. When he got quiet and didn't say anything more, she patted his thin hand and left. A cloud of mist followed her out the front door. The wind on her wet clothing made her shiver. An oracle was a kind of bird, wasn't it? So was Mr. Sellers dreaming about the days when he used to be an airman? The leaves came swirling down the sidewalk past her, skipping and tumbling like circus acrobats. His arms were pinioned. He was being jostled and pushed down a dark trail, sheer cliff faces looming on either side. He was being carried away, he knew, down into blackness and nothingness. Something important lay behind him, something that he dared not lose, but every moment the hands that clutched him, the shadowy forms on either side, were carrying him farther and farther away from it. He tried to turn and felt a sharp pain in his arm, as though someone held a needle-bladed dagger against the flesh. The deeper darkness of the mountain pass was reaching out to enfold him. He struggled, ignoring the piercing agony in his arms, and at last managed to pull free enough to turn his head. In the cleft behind him, nestled between the rocky slopes, but miles away, lay a field of sparkling golden light. As he looked out from Shadow, it burned in the distance like a prairie fire. The city. The place where he would find the thing he had hungered for so long. The hands seized him and turned him back around, then shoved him forward. He still could not see who held him, but he knew that they were dragging him down into shadow, into emptiness, into a place where even the memory of the Golden City at last would fade. He fought against his captors, but he was held fast. His dream, his one hope, was receding. He was being carried down helplessly into a black void. Orlando! Orlando! You're having a bad dream. Wake up! He struggled upward toward the voice. His arms hurt. They had him. He had to fight. He opened his eyes. His mother's face hovered over him, shining faintly in the light from the window, like a three-quarter moon. Look what you've done! Concern fought with annoyance in her voice. Concern won, but just barely. You've knocked all your things over. I was having a bad dream. As if I couldn't tell. It's that net all day long. No wonder you have nightmares. She sighed, then bent and began picking things up. A little anger pierced his lingering chill. You think the net is the only reason I have nightmares? She paused, a wad of dermal patches filling her palm like fallen leaves. No, she said. Her voice was tight. No, of course I don't. She put the patches on his bedside table and bent to pick up the other things he had knocked over. But I still think it can't be good for you to spend so much time plugged into that machine. Orlando laughed. It was an angry laugh, and he meant it to be. Well, everybody needs a hobby, Vivian. She pursed her lips, even though it had been his parents' idea that he should call them by their first names, not his. Don't be bitter, Orlando. I'm not. And he wasn't, really, he realized. Not like sometimes. But he was angry and frightened, and he wasn't quite sure why. Something to do with the nightmare, the details of which were already beginning to evaporate. a feeling that something else was also slipping away from him. He took a breath. I'm sorry. Sorry. It was a scary dream. She set his IV stand back up straight. He had tipped it over against the wall with his thrashing and checked to make sure the needle was still in place and secured. Dr. Vaughn says we can stop using this at the end of the week. That will be nice, won't it? It was her way of apologizing. He tried to accept it in good grace. Yeah, that'll be nice. He yawned. I'll go back to sleep. Sorry if I made a lot of noise. She pulled the blanket back up to his chest. For a moment she rested her cool hand against his cheek. I was just worried. No more bad dreams now. Promise? He slid down, found the remote, and tilted the upper part of the bed to a more comfortable angle. Okay, Vivian. Good night. Good night, Orlando. She hesitated for a moment, then leaned to kiss him before she went out. For a moment he considered turning on his nightlight to read, then decided against it. Knowing that his mother had heard his distress from the other room made the darkness a little more comfortable than usual, and he had things to think about. The city, for one thing. That preposterous place of which no record seemed to remain in the middle country. It had invaded his dreams, just as it had invaded Thargor's world. Why did something which was probably no more than a bit of signal interference, or at most a hacker's prank, seem so important? He had given up believing in far more practical types of miracles long ago. So what could this mirage possibly mean for him? Did it signify anything at all, or was it only a freak occurrence, acting now as a magnet for his fear and largely abandoned hope? The house was quiet. Nothing short of an explosion would wake his father, and by now his mother would have slid back down into her own shallower and more restless slumber. Orlando was alone in the darkness with his thoughts. Okay, so we're starting Chapter 11, Inside the Beast, although we probably won't get very far through it. Net feed, music. Christ plays for lucky few. Visual close-up of dog's head. Voiceover. Johann Sebastian Christ made a surprise appearance on a local net show in his adopted hometown of New Orleans. Visual, dog head, human hands. The first time the reclusive singer has been seen since the death of 3 members of his musical group Blonde Bitch in a stage accident last year. Visual, man dancing in dog mask, flaming stage shown on wall screen in background. Christ performed 3 songs for the astonished studio audience, accompanying himself with a playback of the accident. Rini turned, frantically scanning the crowd that filled the terraces around the bottomless well. Kabu hadn't replied, but perhaps there was something wrong. There was something wrong with his equipment. Perhaps he'd just gone offline, and there was something wrong with her equipment, which still registered a guest on her line. She prayed it was that simple. The crush was insubstantial, but still overwhelming. Laughing businessmen in smoothly tailored, blade-hard bodies bumped her aside as they passed, their first-class rigs and paid-up accounts generating an invisible but very real barrier between them and the hoi polloi. A few obvious tourists in rudimentary virtual forms moved aimlessly, overwhelmed as the swirling traffic bounced them from one edge of the walkway to the other. Smaller forms, servitor creatures, and agents darted in and out of the throng, running errands for their masters. As far as Rini could tell, Kabu was not one of them, but her search was made more difficult by the unexceptional quality of the sim he had been wearing. There were at least 24 quite similar figures within a short distance of her, gawking at the scenery while trying to stay out of the way of the big spenders. Even if he were close by, without audio contact, it was impossible to locate him quickly. And Rini knew she had only moments before Strimbello arrived. She needed to move, to get going. But where? Even if she ran far and fast, she couldn't hope to hide for very long within Mr. J's from someone who was connected to the club. Besides, the fat man had announced that he knew her, knew who she truly was. Even now, the club's management might be accessing her index, contacting the Polly to get her fired. Who could guess? But she could not afford those worries right now. She had to find Kabu. Had he simply gone offline, disgusted by the Yellow Room's grotesque floor show? He might even now be loosening his straps in the harness room, waiting for her to return. But what if he hadn't? A startled eddy of reaction passed over the faces around her. Most of the terrace crowd turned toward the door of the Yellow Room. Rini turned too. Something huge had appeared in the passage behind her, vast and round, wider than 4 or 5 normal Sims and still growing. Its shaven head swiveled like a turret on a tank. Black eyes like machine gun barrels raked the crowd, then locked on her. The thing that called itself Strimbello smiled. "There you are." Rini spun, took 2 swift steps, and flung herself over the rim of the well. Moving at top permissible speed, she dove downward through the other, less hurried club patrons, who floated like lazy fish. Her descent was still agonizingly slow. The well was a browsing device, not a thrill ride. But she did not intend to outrun the fat man. He almost undoubtedly knew Mr. J's far too well for that to work. She had simply moved out of his visual field for a moment, which she hoped would give her time to do something more effective. "Random!" she commanded. The well and its thousands of Sims bobbing like champagne bubbles blurred and vanished, replaced a moment later by another crush of bodies, all naked this time, although some bore attributes she had never seen on a living human form. The light was directionless and low, the close-leaning walls velvety folds of uterine red. Throbbing music made her earplugs almost bounce. A Sim face, frighteningly imprecise, looked up from the nearest coil of forms. A hand snaked free and reached out to her, beckoning. "Oh, no," she murmured. How many of these shapes were minors, children like Stephen, admitted with a smirk by the management and allowed to glut themselves on the filth of this place? How many disguised children had been present in the Yellow Room, for that matter? Nausea knotted her stomach. "Random!" A vast flat-walled space opened before her, its farther end so distant as to be nearly invisible. Gas flame blue letters appeared before her in a script she did not recognize, while a voice intoned words into her earplugs that were equally incomprehensible. An instant later, the whole picture shuddered as the translation software read her index and changed to English. "Choose now whether you wish a team game or an individual competition." She stood and stared as humanoid shapes snapped into existence just behind the blue burning letters. They wore spiked helmets and shiny body armor. The eyes within the visors were only sparks. "You have opted for an individual competition," said the voice with a faint note of approval. "The game is creating your designated opponents now." "Random!" She moved through the rooms faster and faster, hoping to lay down so many kinks in her trail that even if they tried to pin her location directly, it would take Strimbello some time to find her. She jumped and found a pool surrounded by lazily swaying palm trees. Bare-breasted mermaids lounged on the rocks beside it, combing their hair as they swayed to languid steel guitar music. She jumped. A long table with one empty seat. The dozen men waiting there all wore robes. Most also wore beards. One turned as she popped in, smiled, and cried, "Seat yourself, Lord." She jumped again, and kept jumping. A room full of blackness, with stars gleaming distantly up where the roof should be, and red-lit crevices in the floor. Somebody or something was groaning. 1,000 men with smooth heads like crash dummies, all dressed in identical coveralls, sitting on benches in 2 long rows, slapping each other. A jungle full of shadows and eyes and bright, colorful birds. A woman in a torn blouse was tied to a tree. Oily red blossoms were piled around her feet. A cowboy saloon. The bad guys wore nothing but spurs. A ship's rocking cabin, oil lamps swinging, tankards waiting in the gimbals. A glittering ballroom where all the women's faces were hidden behind animal masks. A medieval inn. The fire burned high and something howled outside the tiny windows. An empty park bench beside a streetlight. A blast of throbbing noise and blinding glare that might have been a dance club. A cave with wet walls illuminated by strands like glowing spider webs that dangled from the ceiling. An old-fashioned phone box. The receiver was off the hook. A desert with walls. A casino that seemed to inhabit the gangster era of Hollywood movies. A desert without walls. A chamber with an oven-hot floor and all the furniture made of metal. A formal Korean garden, the bushes full of grunting naked shapes. An open-air cafe beside the ruins of an ancient freeway. A terraced garden jutting like a theater balcony from the side of a tall cliff. Beside it, a vast waterfall thundered down into the gorge. Dizzy, almost ill from the speed of her transitions, Rini paused on the terrace. She closed her eyes until the blur of colors stopped, then opened them again. A few of the dozen or so guests sitting at tables along the edge of the garden looked up incuriously, then turned back to their conversations and the spectacle of the waterfall. And we're going to stop there because we're just starting that chapter. So, anyway, thank you for bearing with me as I went a little bit over the top there in terms of time-wise, but that's okay. We're just giving you your money's worth. Oh, look at all these other people who showed up after I signed off. There's Steve, Happy New Year. Regina, Happy New Year. And Timur, Happy New Year. Patrick, Happy New Year. So, Happy New Year to all of you. And me, I'm going to sign off for the night. I will be back 7 p.m. today. You know, it's today for me and you, I guess, unless you're in Australia, in which case it gets more complicated. But that's all right. And it's yesterday, I guess. Anyway, it doesn't matter. 7 p.m. Sunday and 1 a.m. Sunday. Those are the times now. So until that point comes, and for those of you who don't do the Sunday evening shows, I will see you next Sunday at 1 a.m. my time. And thank you very much for joining me. And a very, very happy New Year. And here are devout wishes for a healthy, happy 2022 for everybody, and especially all of you good people. Take good care of yourselves. Take good care of your loved ones, your friends, your neighbors, the folks wandering around in the general vicinity. We all need to take care of each other. I will see you very soon. And again, I thank you for joining me. Have a good night. Peace. See you soon.